everybody. Welcome back to the 7 Questions Sunday podcast. My name is Kev, the founder and owner of Forever Green. Today, I am joined by Danny, the owner of Blue Rose Bar in Tacoma. And Danny, again, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm very excited to learn more about you and more about Blue Rose. And yeah, let's just, jump right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, let's see. I'm a 47-year-old single father of 2 small children. I have spent the past 10 years working in the corporate world, and in that time frame, I just got mentally and emotionally exhausted and burned out, and knew it was time for a change. Had the opportunity to stop and really evaluated what it is I wanted to do with myself. And I had always had the dream, like since I was very small, since I was a teenager, of having like a space, a place for people to come together and meet each other. It was one of my favorite things as a young person, going to coffee shops, things like that, meeting new people, hanging out. And I just wanted to have that, add that to the world. As I got older, obviously, the idea of a bar popped into my head once I was able to frequent them. And I went, hey, this is pretty good. Maybe I want to do this. And then I never had the opportunity. And then once, of course, all of these things happened, and having worked pretty hard for the past decade, I did. And so I went, hey, I'm going to do it. I needed to move to Tacoma in order to stay close to my children. And so I started looking for a place and found one and dove in.
Head first, diving in is always the
Yes.
best way to do it.
Yeah.
Now that you've told us a little bit about yourself, the whole premise of 7 Questions Sunday is to ask local individuals and businesses in the Pacific Northwest 7 questions.
Sure.
And we want to find out more about them because we want to direct people in the region to you, and even people who are coming in from out of town, we want to direct them over to you as well.
Right.
So we're going to dive right into these 7 questions.
Okay.
Let's get started here. What inspired you to start your restaurant? Like, what was the initial goal here?
I mean, I kind of covered it already, but the initial goal here was I really wanted to pursue a dream that I've had since I was really young. I wanted to create a space where people could come together, gather, get to know other people, enjoy the environment, have good food, have good drinks, things along those lines. Creating that space was really rewarding for me. I'm really happy with how it came out. I still have plenty to do, but as far as what has been created there, I really do love what we've built, my team and I. And I just want a place where people can come, really have a nice time, get to know each other, get to know the staff, enjoy good food, feel comfortable, feel like they're at home. I want it to become like, that place where like you're at home with your significant other or not, and going, I wonder what I want to do tonight. I know, let's go check out the Blue Rose Bar, see what's going on. That's really what I want it to be, is the place that comes to mind in those moments.
That is a great goal to have. I know, following a dream doesn't just happen right away, as we both know. I mean, it comes down to how long are you going to put it off until you just follow it. So I mean, that's the best way that I can think about it. But that is great. I mean, I like how you went from, hey, let's open up a coffee shop, which again, admirable. A lot of it's very hard. I'm sure you could talk to any of the coffee shop owners in Tacoma alone. It's very hard. And I mean, just to pivot and say, you know what, bar, restaurant, yeah, let's do that, because again, people are going to love that. Yeah. People love it when they find out somewhere new or a hidden gem that they come across. And I think that's one of the greatest things about Tacoma in general. Yeah. There's a lot of places that you could just be driving and see something and be like, oh,
what's that?
Hey, what is this going on here? Like, there's places I had never seen. One day I drove by Happy Belly and I was like, what is Happy Belly? Like, what is going on here? And then a year later, I finally was like, okay, that's a place downtown I haven't gone to yet. So, but I mean, that's just an example of, not being afraid to go outside with your original plan and start something new, really.
Yeah, I wouldn't use not being afraid. definitely scary.
Oh, definitely scary following a dream for sure.
But yes, it's being willing to take that risk, and I worked really hard to support the family, to build a life, to do all of those things, and in doing so, I mean, the reward of that is great, obviously, right? And I'm very proud of that. But there was also a piece of it that was soul crushing, just doing that corporate world and the daily, the day-to-day slog of it, and the mind numbingness of it, so to speak. And I had enough, and I was like, I have been doing this for a while. I want to do the thing I wanted to do now, and I now have the means, and this is a huge risk, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it.
Hey, no risk, no reward, right?
Right. That's right.
And at least that's what they always told us when we were growing up, right?
Yeah.
There's
we'll see
no risk, no reward. Yeah, exactly. See how true that is. So how do you, second question, how do you believe that the Blue Rose is contributing to the local community, both kind of economically and culturally?
Okay. So economically, obviously I'm employing people who work here, or, and that's wonderful. And I'm glad, and I love my staff. Additionally, obviously, there's a number of local, like for example, the sign painter is local. The artists that I feature within the business itself are local. It providing, the exchange of goods and funds throughout, the circulation of money and all of those aspects. Culturally, I mean, first off, I have local artists featured within the bar and the cafe side as well. I want this to be a place where people can come and exchange ideas and meet new people and things along those lines, which I think is very important. And I think I've fostered a space for that. It's comfortable, it's warm, it is open. It also is quirky and different and interesting, and like all of those pieces that kind of inspire, like maybe not just your standard type of conversation and your standard type of people coming up, but maybe some of the more unusual and interesting types of world that come together, and that's what I aim for, right? I am working towards expanding that to include music. I haven't really met a lot of musicians yet. I don't really have space for it. I want to make sure that I build out a space that actually makes it work, that doesn't impede customer enjoyment in general.
Right.
So I'm working on that piece. I want to expand those aspects of it as well. But really, it comes down to it being kind of a community gathering spot and a forum for just people to come together and meet each other, exchange ideas, get to know each other, and yeah.
No, I like that a lot, especially the featuring, local artists in the inside the establishment. I myself have not been yet. It is on my list of places to go.
Well, I look forward to you visiting.
I plan on it. I'll probably end up doing that this week. My father's in town from Florida, so he and I may come through and have some lunch or something. And now, with that, I mean, the want to expand into music, that's great as well. And we all know you don't have to just go full bore into a full blown venue and bring in band after band, and you just couldn't, right? So I mean, I would imagine you're bringing in some singer songwriters, some people, maybe 1-2 piece, maybe 3 if you could fit it. That's great. Like there's a few places that do that. Yeah. But I'd like to see more, especially in Tacoma. There's a lot of talented people in Tacoma who would come out and they would sound great. They'd be great. So one of my favorite questions that I put together for this while I was doing your interview, I'm a bit of a food person myself. I just finished a cookbook that I had been working on for many, many years. And finally, unfortunately, I got laid off back in March, and it gave me an opportunity to work on it. So this is one I kind of crafted, because this is one I'm going to ask in many different ways to many different individuals who own restaurants and cafes and whatnot. Among the dishes on your menu that you serve, do you have a personal favorite? And if so, why is that your personal favorite?
Sure. So the one that I would call my personal favorite as of today is actually one that came with the place when I bought and it's the turkey is what it's called. It's a turkey sandwich. It's mounds of turkey on a delicious roll that's warmed. And the reason it's so good is it has a mango and blue cheese sauce that's as a part of it, the dressing. That the combination of the creaminess, the sweetness of the mango, as well as the tartness, the bite of the blue cheese mixed together, complements the turkey so well. It's the most popular sandwich. It's just really good.
That I want to say that sounds amazing. I'm just not a blue cheese person.
I get it. I
you
do.
know,
it's you can't really tell that it's blue cheese. But I'm not going to make you like we have other things. I'm not,
right.
But I will say this: like it is impressive how good it is.
Now, if you told me that had like a mango cranberry goat cheese on it, then I'm in there and I'm ready for it. My dad. I think my dad likes blue cheese. If he does, then I'll just have him get that and I'll try some of it. that actually, I want to try it. Even though
well we have many other sandwiches, we have great salads, we have soups, I've added a pub pretzel to the menu. I'm looking at other things. I'm from San Diego, so I do want to have some more Southern California inspired dishes added to the menu as well, which I just haven't had a chance to truly come up with the best recipe that works logistically with the kitchen. But I also don't want to appropriate, and I don't want to I'm not a taco shop. Right. I'm not going to try to add tacos to a menu. You know what I mean? It's like that's not going to be what we do.
So you're saying there won't be a California burrito on the Blue Rose menu anytime soon?
No, although that is one of my favorite meals and something that when I lived in San Diego, ate at least once a week, if not twice, maybe even 3 times.
Every time I visited San Diego, being from San Diego, are you familiar with Trujillo's?
Mm-hmm.
I love Trujillo's.
Yeah,
I truly do. I had a band years ago, and we did a couple shows in San Diego, and we stayed at the Howard Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Over there in El Cajon, and a buddy of mine was like, "Man, you got to go to Trujillo's." And this is before the Trujillo's was at the hotel. So we walked all the way over to the SDSU Trujillo's from the Howard Johnson. We didn't realize how far we were walking.
Right.
And I had
this burrito.
Was still worth it.
Yeah.
It was very much worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had California burritos, and I've had in LA. I've done that whole thing. But there was just something different.
Don't ask San Diegans about LA Mexican food.
Right. And there was just something different about it for me. When I had this, so when my wife and I took our kids down to San Diego for vacation, we took them to Trujillo's, and my son was like, "Oh yeah, I just want to get a burrito." I'm like, "Nah, you need to understand how big this burrito is, and you're probably going to eat it today and tomorrow."
Right.
He's like, "Well, I don't want to eat it today or tomorrow." I'm like, "All right, then we'll split it because it is huge." And then we took them down to Old Town San Diego, and we're walking by. I forget what restaurant it is, but there's this older woman outside making tortillas by hand, and I think she was making spinach tortillas at the time. And my son's walking by. She goes, "Do you want one?" And he looks at me. I'm like, "You better take that tortilla. Yeah. That's gonna be the best tortilla you're gonna have while we're on this trip. I promise you this." And he ate it. And he's just like, "I think we should have lunch here." So I don't know that we ended up having lunch there, but it was a great time. And I think you're right, spot on there of not trying to do too much or bring too much influence from outside in. Right. So that's definitely a great way to think about it. Kind of that brings me kind of the next question. What's been the most significant challenge you faced as a restaurant owner, let's just say in Tacoma, and how did you overcome it while keeping the business going?
Well, first off, we've been open for 3 months, so I can't say we've overcome anything at this point, right?
Okay.
It's still very early on. I think that the biggest challenge is the unexpectedness of things that can happen. The roller coaster of it. I can have this incredible day that makes me go, "Oh man, we're doing great. We're going to do so good." And then it can be followed by like the slowest day we've ever had. And then I'm like, "Oh, I'm failing." And it's that swing can be very emotionally hard on you. It can really mess with your psyche. It's interesting though, because one of the things that I've found is that even though that can happen, there's nothing else would rather be doing. Like that's something that's really struck me, is that even in those really challenging moments, and I'm like, did I make the right choice? When I'm having those moments, I'm still going, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Like this I found the thing that's actually making me happy.
Right.
Now I just need to make sure it works.
I love that outlook on it, like,
Yeah.
because so many people. I mean, the same for us as well. Like, we started in 2018. Sales were great up until COVID, and then I was like, how are we going to do this through COVID?
Yeah.
But thankfully, it wasn't the only thing I was doing.
Sure.
But still, the biggest challenge for us was just people are at home. People really aren't buying anything right now. What are we really going to do here?
Yeah.
And thankfully, we had our anniversary during COVID, we had our 2-year anniversary in 2020. So thankfully we had an anniversary box we put out, just a 2-year anniversary box. We limited it to 50 of them, and they sold out within a week.
Awesome.
So I was like, okay, there we go. There we go. That's a little bit of something that helped me keep going, and you redesign things, and you just try what's the challenge here?
Right.
I think when you do what you love, that is like, you can overcome almost every challenge when you're doing what you love.
Yeah.
Now, having only been open for 3 months now, as you said, correct? So how are you fostering a strong connection with your customers and making them feel like a part of the restaurant?
Well, that really comes down to, first, the obvious answers, which are how they're treated when they walk in the door. Making sure they're treated with respect and welcoming attitude, attentiveness, those fun things. Making sure I'm very proud of my staff. They're very friendly, warm, welcoming people, attentive. The important things that you need for people who are providing service. So that's step one. The next one is I tried to make sure that the space itself was a lot more comfortable and not in any way off-putting to customers as they come in. That it was projecting the right message so that they understand what they're walking into. And I'm still working on that. There's still aspects of the space that I want to improve and change to give even more of the right. Like, this is where you are. But that requires figuring out the right logistics. There's a lot of pieces to it, but I'm working my way there. Being receptive to ideas, understanding, what they would like to see, things along those lines are important. There's a balance there, because I'm communicating my vision. This is how I want to present my space. This is how I want. But I also want to make sure that customers enjoy what is created, right? So finding that balance so that it presents who you are and who you see yourself in the space as, along with what makes them happy and feel comfortable. So yeah, it's been fun, figuring out those nuances, and like, I had to improve a bunch of the furniture. I changed up the entire decor of the place, fixed, like, all the light fixtures, all of these different things from a decoration standpoint to really make it nice and welcoming and warm in there. And then ensuring that the menu, like, I've been making gradual and small changes to the menu based off of, what people are enjoying the most and what's selling well versus what's not, but also trying to state, like, people enjoy the menu. I don't want to make too many dramatic changes and
right.
Somebody's like, what the hell happened to my favorite thing? So finding those balances and making sure that everybody is getting the opportunity to try something new, coming up with better ideas, but also not taking things away that they love. Stuff like that. I want to keep it simple. I don't want a big, giant, massive, menu. I like having this, like, straightforward, here's what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
One of my least favorite things is going to restaurants and going, there's just too much here. Like, just can you just pick something for me? Like that's
Right.
how I feel, when I see that. I'm just like, okay, now you've got too many options. Now I don't want anything.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part when you go to some restaurants. Even in
Hmm.
Tacoma, there are those restaurants that
Hmm.
just have a book for a menu.
Right.
I'm like, I didn't come here to read. Like, I came here to eat. Like I guess I'm going to go with what I always get, because
Right.
it's just
Exactly.
so. Supplemental question to that, you talk about the menu. What would you like to see on the menu that you don't have already?
Well, so I'm not. I don't want to get too ahead of myself there, because
Mm-hmm.
it really comes down to logistics and what we're capable. The kitchen is small.
Okay.
The amount of space I have for, say, frozen thing, my freezer space is small. My walk-in's fine, but you know what I mean. There's limited space. There's limited resources. So from that perspective, I can't like. I have ideas that I want to implement, but I can't guarantee that they'll be there. And so I have to be careful on what I say. I do want to introduce flatbreads, so having like flatbread pizzas on the menu as a thing. But I need to figure out what I'm willing to take away in order to do that. And so
Right.
there's this give and take that's in each of these decisions. And so that's where we're at right now.
No, I like that. I like that because most places would just let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks, and then try it out. And if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then they just try on the next thing. I think you being very thoughtful
Yeah, I'm trying.
thoughtful in what you can and cannot do logistically.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I don't believe a lot of people look at it from a logistics standpoint, which it's good to look at it from a logistics standpoint, because like you just said, minimal freezer space, decent walk-in space, but why would I want to clutter up the space I
Right.
have on something I'm not sure about?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think it's a very thoughtful way to look at it, and
Well,
I think it takes a lot of pressure off of you by not being like, hey, I'm going to throw these 5 things on the menu. Let's see if they work.
Yeah, I mean, I have to consider, like, it's always a give and take, right? Anything that I'm adding or changing, I'm taking something away. There's no way for me to just have it all, because if I have it all, that's a question again, like we can talk about business here, scalability,
Yeah,
right? So when you're talking about scaling, you have to be situated to be able to scale, which that also, of course, like what kind of workload are you putting on your staff, for example, by doing
right.
that? There's all these different pieces to consider. And so I don't want my staff scrambling to understand new menu items and not being able to, like, not being prepared, because now there's, like, again, back to there's 25 things on there that, and then if they don't work, then I take them away, and then they're like, well, what's next? Like, I want to make sure that anything that I'm doing has that, again, the word thoughtfulness behind it, and there's actually going to be a positive benefit to that change.
Right.
Now that there is a risk there, because it does also come into being tepid or timid, if you want, and so I have to be, again, give and take, balance, right? So yeah,
because I mean, if you don't put the pressure on yourself, then you're not having to put the pressure on your prep cooks, your wait staff. Like
mm-hmm.
it just makes it to where everything still flows the way it needs to be. And again, you get the moment to have a thoughtful conversation with yourself about, is this what we're going to do?
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I don't know many people who do. So, I mean, I like that perspective a lot. And it gives,
Appreciate it.
I think it could give any business owner something to think about, not just a restaurant owner. I think for anybody to just be thoughtful about how their actions affect everybody and not just the business itself, but the people who help run the business, I think that's great.
I mean, it's a pretty important piece.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I rely pretty heavily on my team, and if I don't consider them in my decisions, then I'm doing them a pretty big disservice.
Absolutely. 100%. Now, the next question I have for you is just kind of how does being a restaurant owner now, you went after that dream, you became a restaurant owner. How does it transform you personally? And what unexpected lessons thus far have you learned?
No, I mean, so I covered some of this already. I think personally, it's transformed me in a sense of so far. I mean, the transformations. It's hard to say. It's going to come out sounding negative, but it's not. If that makes sense. Like,
No, it does.
I'm a bit more chaotic right now than I'm used to be. I'm kind of all over the place because there are so many things to be done and so many things to keep track of and remember and do. And from that perspective, it sounds negative, like, oh God, you're like overwhelmed. And yes, there's truth to that. There's an overwhelming aspect to this, especially 3 months in. But at the same time, there's a level of reward and fulfillment when things work that's just, that's the ultimate endorphin rush or whatever you want to call it. That I think from that perspective, there's been a bit of a combination of diligence that's come through. Like, I've really got to make this happen, with at the same time a dash of que sera sera, where it's like, what happens will, and being able to accept both of those things at the same time.
I like that. I like that, because having just a chaotic mode, so to speak, is
Yeah.
I think for any creative or any business owner, anybody trying to launch something or come up with an idea, like the minute that chaos hits,
Yeah.
there's so many things going on, and you can find your groove within that chaos and to just kind of to navigate the chaos, not
Yeah.
necessarily subside it. I
Right.
think you can learn a lot about yourself with that. And from just what I read and what your the little intro you wrote about yourself, that as somebody who's been in music, as a DJ, promoter, event planner, like you get it. Like that chaos is a different chaos.
It is. It is. It's a very different chaos. I think one of my biggest lessons there, we're going to go backwards in time a little bit here. And this also comes back to the conversations we've had about staffing, and supporting your staff. When I was pretty young, I was still in my 20s. I'm 47 now. I was doing an underground party in a loft, and I was in the planning, like getting everything ready. I got the vendors there with the water, and I got the DJ setup going, and the sound system getting set up, and the lighting, and all of the stuff being done. And there was this young lady who was extremely helpful, 100% just a volunteer, right? She was one of those kids that runs around and hands out flyers at all the other events, right? And she was just like super enthusiastic and helpful and wonderful. And she showed up in the midst of all the chaos of getting everything set up and was just like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I looked at her and I said, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And her face just went like, and she just looked shell shocked and so sad, and like walked off with tears in her eyes. And immediately I was like, "Oh shit." Like, what did I just do?
Right.
And I felt I just felt mortified and terrible for how I treated her in that moment. She's someone who had volunteered her time to help me out. And I was so busy in this one mode, right? That I couldn't accept, like, she shouldn't have been there at that moment, technically, right? Like, we're not ready for you. But my response to her had zero sensitivity in it, and zero, like, like, it just didn't consider anything except for, you're not supposed to be here right now. And that was it, right? And I mean, I was able to smooth it out with her, and I was very apologetic, and all was well in the long run. But that taught me one of the bigger lessons I've learned in life, which is how important it is to respect and appreciate those that are there supporting you. And I mean, in general, you should support people, like, and respect them. But especially in the case of somebody who is supporting you, there's never a time where it's okay to just disregard them in that manner, or disregard their feelings about what's happening. So
no, absolutely. That that runs rampant within the party and event planning and music show planning
everywhere. But yes,
everywhere. And I'm guilty of doing it too, putting shows together and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, and I yelled at a lot of people for being late for sound check.
Yeah.
I remember one,
and it's frustrating.
Yeah,
it is.
like one band, like I had to tell like the dude who had one band, I was like, hey man, I don't know how you do things, but this is not how I do things. If I say sound check is at 5, guess what? You need to be there at 4:45 because sound check's at 5.
Right.
Like I guess maybe I'm one of the few people who have been in the music industry who care whether or not people are on time for sound check like that much. But I know how it can affect the outcome of an event.
Right. And so over time I've learned, like, if there are things like that, right, it's important to communicate up front.
Yes.
Hey, here are the circumstances, and this is why it's important that you arrive at this time. Is this something that we can agree upon? Right. Mm-hmm. And if you get to that point where you have that upfront communication, there's that mutual understanding, then when they're late, it's easier for you to first not react as upset,
right? Because
you've already had the discussion, so you can have the, hey man, didn't we have an agreement, instead of a what the fuck, right? You can have that conversational aspect of it, which allows them to hold themselves accountable as opposed to you feeling like you have to hold them accountable. But it also puts into their mindset the understanding of the importance, and hopefully because they're mutually invested at that point, they won't be late.
Yeah, I found that throughout the time that I was doing shows heavy from 2009 to just 2020, I think my attitude changed a lot for sound check, and I started having more thoughtful conversations with individuals.
Yep.
You know, and being like, hey guys, look. Like, that's why I started having people sign agreements.
Yeah.
There you go. And the agreement is stated if you didn't show up for sound check, you didn't get paid.
Yep. And there you go. See, you've created now there's a mutual understanding. You have a mutual agreement, and you can now hold yourself accountable instead of my having to hold you accountable.
Yeah. I had a gentleman who just started doing music. It was his first show. And he showed up 2 hours early for sound check.
Of course.
And we couldn't even get in the venue, right? So I was like, look at this kid. Look at this kid. He's ready to get in here. He's ready to do his sound check.
Right.
You know, and it was just a different experience. Like, other than, you know, having a bunch of grown men be like, I just show up when I show up, man.
Right.
Like,
well, they're jaded.
Right. Like, do you want to get paid or not? Like, you got to show up if you want to get paid.
Right.
You know, so Danny, my next question is the final question on the list of 7 questions. But it is, you know, what's next for Danny and the Blue Rose?
Well, hopefully shitloads of success and happiness and joy. Next, like I said, I do want to try to expand. We, you know, the type of licensing I have and all of that, I can never be a venue where there's dancing or cover or anything like that. So I don't have any intention of becoming that. I didn't initially even want to necessarily go into the world of having entertainment and things like that. I wanted the food and the environment to speak for itself. Problem is getting people in the door. You need to have things that are a draw. So that, again, that give and take. So that's where that's coming from. But I do feel kind of excited about the idea of doing things like having, I have a corner where right now it's kind of retail-ish, and I want to get that out of there and move it to the back stock. And I want to turn that section into a stage. And I want to have like things like solo blues artist performances, you know, jazz vocalists, soul vocalists, things along those lines. Not necessarily the Joan Baez cover, you know,
right? So
guitar solo act, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just more of a coffee shop vibe, and I want more of that. I like the explanation and the reception I've gotten is that my place is what you might call a dive lounge, and I love it.
I like
That's
that.
The perfect energy. That's exactly what I want it to be. And so I want any music that is brought in to meet that energy, right? So the other thing that I want to do is probably have DJs that come in that do like, you know, rare grooves or garage digging in the crates kind of nights where you get to hear music from a selector who's curating based off of, you know, those wonderful gems that they've found
Right.
not the stuff that you hear all the time. And so something that will be an experience as opposed to just, I mean, we have touch tunes. You can come in and you can play whatever the hell you want. But
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I want that additional thing where like it's a draw for people to come in and see what they might hear. And especially, I mean, one of my favorite things about those types of nights is when you have a favorite, you know, hidden gem song, right? And then a DJ plays it. You're like, oh
yeah. You go crazy on the inside.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, you know what you're doing, yep. DJ. You're a good DJ.
I do that to my wife all the time. Like we'll be somewhere. I forget where we were. We were having dinner somewhere.
Yeah.
And a song kicks on. I go, you know what? I looked at my wife. I was like, whoever's doing the music here knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Like that's all I could say. Like whoever's doing this really knows what's going down right now.
Right.
Because I was like, yo, what the? And I think it was some obscure song from like the late 80s. And I was like, yo, what is going on?
Yeah.
I'm 42. So for me, when I hear certain songs, I'm like, yo, 1989 was so nice. Like that's all I could think. Like I was 8 years old hearing this song. It's great.
Yeah.
You know, but I really love that idea.
Yeah.
Having just DJs come in and
make
sure they have a curated set.
I used to do a night like that down in San Diego a long ass time ago. I called it Rare Form Sundays, and that's exactly what it was. It was like an industry night, right? Like it was the DJs get that the DJs that play all the other clubs get to come in, and instead of playing what they play at all the other clubs, they get to play whatever they feel like playing, right? Like do something different. What are those favorite things that you don't get to play at the club, right? And it was a fun night. And it was all industry people. It was never, you know what I mean?
Sounds like a
never
good
like
time.
A huge hit, but it was like, yeah, it was. We all had a great time there because we got to listen to just like weird, obscure tracks and make jokes with each other. So it was like 50% DJs and 50% bartenders hanging out at a bar, right?
And then you got the one guy who comes in and somebody goes, "This guy's got the deep cuts, I promise."
Right.
And he pulls out the deepest cut from like 1974, and you're like,
right.
Why do you have this?
Well, I mean, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Gaslamp Killer used to play there and a few others.
I am not familiar with that.
Okay.
I did.
You should check out Gaslamp Killer.
I'm gonna have to. Like, I saw a video this morning, and someone was talking about David McCollum, who is an actor who's been on NCIS for 25 years or 20 years, however long the show's been on.
Okay.
He plays the medical examiner, and how he's the one who wrote the original piece that was sampled by Dr. Dre for the next episode.
Oh,
so I was like, wait a minute, who wrote that? And I was like, the name looked so familiar on it, and I went back and I went and looked at it today. I was like, okay, you son of a gun. One of the most recognizable intros to a hip hop song was a song from the 60s.
Yeah.
It's just a random, like the most random song. Like I would never have thought about it for a hip hop song.
That's one of the things that Dre did really well.
Yeah,
Dre was
finding
a
the samples
at finding the samples and digging in the crates and finding those gems. Absolutely. I would say was like Dre's gone is, but
I don't know. I don't know that there's been many nights like that in Tacoma where you get something like that. I can't tell you if I've ever heard of one because I don't think I have. I think that'd be I would love to go to something like that.
Awesome.
Like I
now
love
I just need to have the room for it. So
as
soon as I make the space, it'll happen.
And I love hearing how I love experiencing how people hear music.
Yeah.
And how they hear what's going on. I love that experience.
It's super important to me. That's like I said, we do have touch tunes. I had to. It was a nightmare removing the library that was in our touch tunes jukebox and then replacing it with music that I actually found to be something I would like to have in there. It took me 2 days to go through and clean out the library and replace it.
Wow.
It was that important, though. It was that important. Music is that important to me. So
2 days. Honestly, I say wow because that's less time than I thought it would take to go through a TouchTunes library.
Oh no, because so initially I just wiped it, which was it still was painstaking and time consuming because the way that it works is you have to literally like check 100 songs, delete, check 100 songs, delete. You know what I mean? Because it would only show like 100 at a time,
Gotcha.
and it was 1,600 and something on there. So that took a while, but then I went through my own library and kind of just like found artists that I wanted to add, and I got it up to about 500 artists, and I was like, okay, cool, we're good. That should be good. Or 500 songs, and that should be good. And then what I didn't know is that it just starts auto adding songs until it gets back up to that 1,600 mark.
Oh.
And so the next morning I go in and look at my favorites list, and I'm just like, what is all of this? No. And so I had to go back, and that time I had to go through and filter through it and actually so then the next step, I had a number of different playlists that I had created prior to having the TouchTunes, and I just literally had the playlist on one side and went down and just like searched for which artists were there and added their songs. And yeah, it took a while.
That doesn't honestly, that sounds like an amazing project.
I mean, it is. It's also, yeah, it took some time. But it was fun. It was fun, and I get to actually be proud of what's in there as favorites instead of just whatever bullshit they put on there.
Just like right? every other place that has TouchTunes,
right?
Who don't even bother having it hooked up to auto update; they just have it.
Right.
Yeah. That's always been fascinating too, right? Like, okay, why don't you update this thing? There's a lot better music out there than what you guys have running on here all the time.
Right.
It just happens.
Yep.
Well, Danny, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Like, honestly,
really appreciate the opportunity.
We reach out to a lot of people to do these interviews, and we always get super excited when somebody emails us back, or if I see that scheduling email come through. Like yesterday, I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go, let's do this." Like I was definitely ready for today. And
awesome.
I'm definitely going to come by. We're probably going to come by tomorrow, Wednesday.
Okay.
My dad's in town till Sunday, and it's going to be me and him tomorrow. So I'm gonna bring him by. We're gonna do lunch, and then again, man, I want to thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. And,
sounds good.
I can't wait to see what's next for you and the Blue Rose, and we'll see where it goes from here.
All right.
And I want to thank everybody who has tuned in or is just now tuning in and starting back from the beginning. Thank you so much for joining us today. 7 Questions Sunday podcast, and we'll see you next time.